Unlike many suburban communities, the Village of Mamaroneck is both blessed and burdened with a multi-acre industrial area. Booming with manufacturing and other businesses for a great part of the last century, we all know that manufacturing is not flourishing in our economy today. So, what is the current status of this important section of the Village of Mamaroneck? And are there plans for a rejuvenation and redesign of the industrial area to embrace new societal norms, needs, and expectations? Here to affirm that the answer to the last question is a definite yes are two members of the Village of Mamaroneck Industrial Area Advisory Committee, John Verni and Andrew Spatz, along with Village of Mamaroneck Manager Rich Slingerland. They've been working for more than 2 years along with village consultant Replace Urban Studios and Village of Mamaroneck Assistant Planner Greg Cutler to assess the opportunities a rejuvenation affords and to create a path to achieving those goals. I'm eager to learn more, aren't you? I'm Alice Bloom. This is A Town in Village 2. Welcome back. I'd like to welcome you all for being here today. Rich, Andrew, John, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to tell our community about the industrial area and all the work that you have been doing. At its peak, how many businesses were flourishing in the industrial area? Anybody know?
That's actually a very good question. And Alice, at its peak, I would say there was a nice diverse proportion of light manufacturing, warehousing, auto body, and some residential. Specifically, there's about approximately 17 residential homes in the industrial area.
Okay, so it's sort of a mixed use
area.
It was
a very, very nicely mixed use, again, of light manufactured to
How large is the industrial area?
70 acres, approximately
70 acres. And in context, how large is the Village of Mamaroneck?
The village is about 3¼ square miles.
Okay.
So if you take the context of where the industrial area is, as I mentioned to Andrew before, it's between I-95 and the railroad, and between Rockland Avenue and the Sheldrake River. So it's in that confined area.
It's a nice set of boundaries that's defined.
It is a very defined nucleus for sure, but about what percentage of the village does the industrial area represent? Anybody know?
Good question. I would say it's probably less than 10%.
Probably less than 10%.
Maybe
Less than,
yeah.
okay, so
maybe
it's a
even less
small
than
area.
5%. It's
Now,
a small
most
area.
suburban areas don't have a defined industrial area.
We are very unique in that regard, other than perhaps Port Chester, which is a village town. You're right, especially on the South Shore. That's what makes Mamaroneck so unique, and our committee so unique in terms of meeting and matching the character of this wonderful community that we call home and the needs of the industrial community.
Now, most people, though who do acknowledge there's an industrial area, know it because they got off 95, they got off the Mamaroneck Avenue exit, and they headed down Fenimore Road because they were going to the harbor, or they were going over to Mamaroneck Avenue for lunch, dinner, at one time a movie. But they maybe didn't give the industrial area much thought. What businesses are there now?
We are very fortunate to have, at this point, again, we have some industry that manufactures. We have, for example, dog bones that are manufactured in the area. There are auto body companies still in the area, warehousing.
There's also things like seafood purveyors and artisanal cheeses and bakeries there.
And
there's 38 businesses down there.
38 businesses.
38
going
businesses.
business concerns.
Yes.
Yeah, and the interest for additional businesses that want to come in has grown tremendously, not just because of the efforts that's been embarked upon by the committees, but also because of the proximity, and people are beginning to see what the potential lies in the Village of Mamaroneck. And I think as one of the gateways into the village, the harbor and other areas, we want to not just make it a drive-by, we want to be able to people to experience the industrial area for what it has and what the potential possesses.
It has a lot of benefits there. It's right off of 95. It's right off of the railroad. There's also an internet trunk line that goes through the area. And so that's attractive to people who are looking for locating their business here. You know, everyone talks about Williamsburg, Brooklyn as being the new hot spot in places in Manhattan, but those places have been kind of overdone now, and the rents have gotten very expensive, gotten very high. So we still have reasonable rents here, and we're still in close proximity to Manhattan, and people are looking to maybe expand out into our area because we have that proximity.
What
to Manhattan.
businesses find an internet trunk area attractive?
Finance.
For instance, finance. So I'll tell you, for instance, when I did over the train station, and most folks know I did over the Mamaroneck train station, and there's a restaurant downstairs. My real estate office is upstairs, and we have a finance company, a private equity firm. Now, they have to download to the SEC their financial records, so they need to have access to a financial, to a trunk line to offload their financial information to the SEC, and so they need that type of access. So that's the type of business that would need that. And Mamaroneck already has it, and if you saw in the news recently, New Rochelle and Mount Vernon and Yonkers are going to try to build it. We have part of it already here, so that's a
Without
benefit.
distracting, we have so much to talk about. When was that internet trunk line put in?
You know, that was something we found out during the due diligence.
It must have been more than 10 years ago, so it's been there for a while.
It was quietly installed. I don't
Yeah.
remember seeing any press about that at
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
time. The area also has a freight line going through it.
That's an interesting, yes. There's so much historical context in the industrial area. One of the unique aspects of it is that trunk line that comes off. It's one of the very few spurs between the Bronx, Manhattan, and New Haven and Stamford. Right now, there's one or two tenants or owners in the area that utilize that line, but it certainly does add to the character of the industrial area.
What do they do? They bring in plastics
They
for
bring in
manufacturing?
plastics for light manufacturing.
Okay.
Exactly. So manufacturing is very much alive, and it's interesting that we say this. One of the drives that we had was branding. Made in Mamaroneck. Much pride comes when you're in a store and you see something that says "Made in Mamaroneck." So it
I think it's interesting you say that because as a former Brooklyn girl, I'm always surprised when I see "Made in Brooklyn" as
Right, sure.
being touted as something to brag about.
Yeah,
Sure.
Brooklyn, in the real estate world, Brooklyn is hot. So, and anything that's associated with Brooklyn is hot.
It's very hot.
Yeah.
Very surprised. We want to make
We're on
Mamaroneck hot.
Yeah.
hot, but again, to conform and cool, hip, but also in tune with the needs of the community and maintain the character of the community as well.
Okay. Well,
So we look at it at a micro and a macro level. It's not just the industrial area, but we also want to make sure we're not competing against the business district or any other developments, the TOD, or any other areas in the
well,
Village
let's
of
back up
Mamaroneck.
for a second because I know that you're very mindful of the businesses that do flourish here. Certainly, Mamaroneck Avenue has become a haven, a go-to place for food.
Yeah.
And we all like food. And it's not just fast food, it's good food and cafes, and it's really a hopping place, especially in the
Correct.
summer when the
Exactly right.
cafes are all operating. We don't want to diminish that in any way, shape, or form.
Right now.
What is presently allowed in the industrial area? What is it zoned for?
Well, right now, it's an M1 manufacturing, and you're permitted wholesaling, again, light industrial. I'm actually referring to
The zoning code.
research laboratories, municipal uses for the Village of Mamaroneck, and off-street parking lots or garages. What we're trying to do is, and again, this is just a brief overshot of what it permits. What we're trying to do is, one of the restrictive covenants in this is retail is only permitted 150 feet within the Fenimore Road. We're trying to open up more opportunities. We don't want to we want to celebrate the historical uses and context of the area, and we want to place an overlay so that more opportunities are permitted into the area. So for example, if you're enjoying a certain use now, we want to make sure that you continue to enjoy that use tomorrow and for many, many years to come. Those are the same businesses that provided jobs and food for the table of the individuals that own the businesses. in
Well,
the
so
industrial area.
what I'm hearing is that you have ultimate respect for the businesses that
Absolutely.
remain in the industrial area and are happy to stay there. What are you thinking of doing to assist them in staying there? I mean, there are probably some challenges to being located in that
The
neighborhood.
wonderful thing over the last 2 years, we've had a tremendous amount of support, both from the committee that I'm so pleased to chair. We have a great committee. We have had the support of the village planner, village manager's office, and many of the trustees. We've held several presentations, workshops that brought in not only tenants, but landlords, owners of properties, and residents that surround the industrial area. to find out exactly what would you like to see. It's as if you took a blank canvas and said, well, what would you like? Maintaining what you enjoy now.
I think we call that visioning.
Yeah.
That's the planner psycho-battle for it.
So sometimes you're having these industrial areas, and I think you and I first met when they were planning on doing IKEA down in New Rochelle, and the city came along and said, we're going to put an IKEA here, and just dropped it on the residents. This has been the opposite of that. We've brought people in over a 2-year period. We want to hear what the residents wanted, what the business wanted, and what really would the real estate community wanted to see there, and what the rents will allow to happen there. And
so I think you're coming from a perspective of this could be better than it currently is. Let's
we want to
maximize.
enhance upon it.
Yes.
Exactly.
Enhance
upon it. And I think also that's really pivotal, transparency. Much like John just said, we want to make sure that individuals feel they're part of this process. Not just a stakeholder as a landowner, but stakeholder as a resident of this community, as a business owner, as a tenant. We want to make sure, and we made a point of making it a very inclusive process. As we were discussing earlier, we've actually gone before the boards and commissions here in the Village of Mamaroneck and actually shared some of the concepts and ideas that we've had so we can receive feedback, not just from the residents, not just from business owners, but also from the individuals ultimately that will have a input in terms of what will be happening.
Now, how many years has the committee been working?
Summer 2014.
Okay,
August.
so it's about 2 years.
Correct.
And what's the official name of this committee? I know you call yourself the Industrial Area Advisory Committee.
That is such a
That's
great
exactly
segue.
right.
It's
Okay.
the Industrial Advisory Committee, but we have, based upon the studies and based upon the vision and proposal we've arrived at, it's sort of changed. And I don't want to be the only one to thunder, but I know John in a moment will share, because we've created a subcommittee to talk about that overlay. We were speaking before about the zoning and how to amend and make it more
But just to
inclusive.
back up for a second, zoning means that there are multiple uses permitted in that area. Retail could be expanded, but is permitted 150 feet, I think you said, from
150 feet from
Fenimore
Fenimore
Road on either
both
side.
north and south.
How about restaurants? Restaurants permitted?
150 feet within Fenimore Road.
Fenimore Road. Right.
Business professionals and governmental offices and banks are allowed down there.
Now,
right?
you also said there are some residences,
Yes,
17.
There's, right.
that, and they
There's ones on
would
there.
remain. And
Yes.
so the
Well, an important thing, let me step in for a minute here. The important thing to keep in mind is what's happening in that industrial area zone. We've seen a decline in occupancy. Some businesses have closed. There have been slow return to having somebody in there. And in quite a few cases, you've actually seen those businesses come down. If you take an aerial photo of the area, you'll see businesses, buildings, other things like that. And after some of the floods in the past, those buildings are now gone and there's parking lots. So what this group is trying to do, John and Andrew as the spearheads, working with the mayor and board and with the staff, throughout the village, and working with our land use boards, is to try to develop a vision to move into the future and attract businesses back to the area, which helps the neighborhood, helps the community, helps the tax base, helps a lot of different things.
So one of those examples there, talking about the residents that are there, is there's no provision right now for live work. So if you want to have a place where maybe you were an artist or making designer furniture or something like they do in Brooklyn, you wouldn't be able to live above the manufacturing store. So that's popular in warehouse space down in Brooklyn.
Sure, or Soho.
So,
I mean,
Soho type of
we know
thing.
how that took off.
So we're trying to match the old uses with the new uses. So co-working spaces, live work spaces,
Art galleries.
things that'll bring a vitality to the space,
What
even
has-
after hours.
What has the response been from current occupiers of space in the industrial area?
That's a fantastic question, and optimistic, but obviously the concern is what happens to me? Am I going to be pushed out? And we're doing everything we can, again, to elicit concerns so that we can address those and make that part of the process as we go forward. But I think there's a great sense, there's a tremendous amount of traction, and as we were discussing earlier, this is the second vision, the second redemption of the industrial area study. We want to make sure that we go forward with the implementation of this wonderful effort.
Okay.
And we're very fortunate to have a tremendous amount of support by the owners of properties, not just stakeholders, but the tenants alike and residents of this community.
Okay, so people are wary, but they'd like to see improvement in this area.
Some folks are wary, but also, Alice, there are new folks in the area. Like there's an art shop, the Bot Shop, that's over in the flats, and there's
What's it called?
the Bot Shop. Laura Bot has an art shop, art store there, and then there's the skateboard place, which is very popular amongst all the kids, the skateboard guys, and so
You have to spend some more time in the industrial area.
there's a youthful energy that wants to see more of that Brooklyn vibe come
How
to
do
it.
we avoid the dreaded G word, gentrification? How do we see improvement here without pushing out businesses that have been here for generations, perhaps?
I would say that one of the goals that we've had is, again, to complement the current uses. For example, there's a tremendous demand for an indoor sports facility, for soccer and lacrosse. Right now, you have to go a significant distance, and there's a wonderful population here with parents that have children that there's a great demand here. So rather than compete with the current use during the day, for example, traffic, this would supplement it after hours. If you go down to the industrial area at 5:30 at any given day, it's very, very quiet.
So you're talking about a multi-purpose sport facility in the
That's a
industrial
possibility.
Okay, so it's one of the things you're
Right.
ruminating about.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
So the concept is really, they call it in Brooklyn the maker community, people that make things. And so we, if I might say, our committee has synthesized everything and come up with the maker zone. And the maker is an acronym for manufacturing, which is already there and we want to do more of. Artisanal foods, there's some artisanal foods with cheese shops and the seafood place there. That's very popular now, we want to supplement that. Crafts, people who make things, people who make furniture, people who make design materials for the building trades. So we spell it with a K, so you have to
be edgy.
forgive it, to be edgy.
Kindergartners don't listen.
Right. The E, importantly, is for environmental buffers, because it is on the Sheldrake, and there is a flooding concern obviously there. But we also want to have a buffer around, because I think that buffer is important for both the environment and also for our neighborhoods. And we heard that during the course of our meetings, that folks down on Rockland Avenue and folks up in Washingtonville are concerned about is there going to be a lot of noise down this area. So we want to have those environmental buffers to kind of set off the area in the middle where we're trying to get more things to happen.
Describe to me what you
now,
mean.
Now, got to get to the R, though.
Okay.
R is recreation, and as Andrew said, there's already a squash place down there. There's a judo place down there. There's some yoga places.
Cross-training.
Cross-training places. And so we want to highlight that and supplement, because that's what people in this new economy are looking for, places that they can live, work, and recreate.
Okay, well, it sounds like a very ambitious agenda. What are the challenges to making this happen? Rich, why don't you start off here?
I think one of the biggest challenges is you've got a fairly small area, although 70 acres sounds like a lot. It's in the big scale of things, it's fairly small. We do want to be considerate of all the surrounding neighbors. You know, you've got a lot of people in established areas of Washingtonville, up in the areas above Palmer Avenue, and then up in the areas along Rockland Avenue, and certainly in the town as well, up the hill.
Right.
So we're trying to coalesce, make something, get a seed or a crystal that'll start bringing things to life back down there, but without having a huge, complete makeover of the area.
Now, how will you mitigate the impacts on the neighboring communities by making this a more vitally used and visited area?
John was actually making reference to that in terms of, if I can just briefly, with the buffer zone, utilizing the natural boundaries that are there already. The Sheldrake, for example, and again, we don't need to get into the details of the Army Corps. They're going to be embarking upon a project, hopefully in the years to come, and we want to celebrate what we have there, make it actually so it can connect the community from one side of the village to the other, to the town of Mamaroneck. There are other examples where this has happened in other communities. In addition to that, we wouldn't focus, we would focus more of the new concepts towards the center of the area rather towards the ends.
On that, I was talking yesterday to one of the members of the environmental committee, and there's a community garden there, which has a certain number of plots, maybe 20, and I think they want to double that and expand
There's
it.
a community garden in the industrial area?
Right
Right
next
off
to
of
the
95.
industrial area.
Right next to the
If-
industrial area, right off of
in
Fenimore.
Bob Walker Park, right off of Fenimore Road.
So as you get off the highway.
Yep.
And so there's a community garden there, and that's going to expand, and that'd be an environmental use that we'd like to include in that buffer.
And and one thing we've remained steadfast in is when we're talking about development, good water management. So we're not contributing to the water.
Okay, you brought me to the next point
Uh-oh.
we have
Yeah.
to talk about. You brought up the Army Corps of Engineers.
I did.
Okay.
It's no secret that the Village of Mamaroneck has struggled with flooding, and I know that you're working very hard to stop this problem. And the Army Corps of Engineers, after many years of study, has come out with a plan to try to help us. How will the flooding that occurs in the industrial area prevent or stall development that you would envision?
I think, again, John and I are very fortunate to be on the Flood Mitigation Advisory Committee as well. And we
Meet with Rich all the time. And that
all the
as well.
time.
I'm there too.
So,
This is,
Of course, Rich has a hand in
Yeah,
everything.
absolutely.
He's letting you
We're very
have your
fortunate.
moments,
Very
but we know he
fortunate.
can speak to everything.
But with that being said, there are many things that we're going to do in terms of, again, with management of the property itself, what can be done so that you're not contributing to runoff into the shell drake and the infrastructure.
That's very
and
important.
burden.
But the point that I raise is, how do you invite people to an area that has a legacy of challenges in the flooding area?
Well,
Right.
that also goes to the issues of what the village has been doing. There's no silver bullet to taking away flooding. We can't, unfortunately, I wish we could have hydraulics which could lift the entire.
Oh, I think everybody does.
But with that being said,
wouldn't that be great?
there have been things that have been done, for example, maintaining the infrastructure that we have, lowering the levels of the reservoir in Larchmont when anticipation of storms, communicating. There are things that can be done on a day-to-day basis that helps mitigate any type of significant flooding that could take place. There is no fix-all, but again, it comes to awareness, collective efforts by the community, owners of properties.
Sure. Now, John, you're kind of the poster child for someone who's made a very large investment in a property which is in a flood area.
Right, absolutely. Right down by the
your
train
fabulous
station.
restaurant down at the
Right.
train station.
And that's like ground zero. Every time it floods in a big way in Westchester, they show that the Columbus Park right by where we did the train station rehab over. And so you have to be concerned about the different levels, and so that fortunately is on a little bit of a piece of higher land than the rest of Columbus Park. But yes, that's why I guess I was asked to be on the flood committee. And so we know that the Army Corps, as Andrew says, there's things we can do now. The Army Corps project is certainly going to help. And doing this is kind of anticipating what the Army Corps is going to come to us with. And so we don't want to be at odds and say they're doing one thing and then have a plan that's in conflict with it. So, so we're planning for it.
In the Army Corps' plan, do they work carefully with you? I know you're trying to keep an eye
Yes.
on what they're doing, but
Yes.
in developing this area, which has a significant
Yeah.
challenge in flooding, are they looking at how to ameliorate the problem?
There is
Well, the
yeah.
industrial
Yeah.
area is going to benefit, as will the rest of the, or a vast majority of the areas in the village that are prone to inland river-caused flooding.
Okay.
So the industrial area, Washingtonville, those areas will benefit. The other areas up the Mamaroneck River all the way to the Thruway. The focus here is really going to be on the river channel, and then by making those improvements, these areas will have a vast reduction in the levels of flooding. You know, as Andrew put it perfectly the other day, we'll go from having catastrophic flooding to nuisance flooding. So the streets may have some flooding. We're talking about a difference from what we saw in 2007 with the 6 to 8 feet of water in some of the
down to
surrounding
2.
streets. It might be a foot or two, but that's
It's manageable. One can
it
live
becomes
with that.
manageable and a cleanup instead of a dislocation of people and businesses.
Or destruction of businesses. One bridge in particular, for example, the Waverly Avenue Bridge, it happens to be a very big source of flooding. That bridge is one of the items that's on the
plan.
Army plan, which will help tremendously.
And Alice, there's been a lot of people working, and the community should know there's a lot of people working on the design of the plan, working with the Army Corps. Some areas are going to have trapezoidal rock formations that are more appealing aesthetically and environmentally. Some areas where there's not a lot of land will have some channels, and we're trying to work our plan into that design so that our green buffer is working with the Army Corps' plan and what
make it all work.
Is it fair to
eventually
say that the past flooding might have something to do with the vacancy rate in the industrial area?
Sure.
I mean,
That's
there
a
are
fair
business-
comment.
Yeah.
That's a fair
I
comment.
I mean, let's be candid.
You know what?
Yeah.
I think, in all fairness, it's one of the first questions we hear when someone is interested in the area. But I will say this: that some of the properties that were taken down and turned into parking lots, the bottom line is dollar for dollar. You have to sort of change the philosophy of just dollar for dollar in terms of what may be best for the future. And just because something is a parking lot, for example, you're getting the rent based on whether it's a one-story structure or just a parking lot.
Well, you're looking at this in context of the health of the entire
Yes,
village
sure.
and how this will
The well-being.
enhance life in the village of
Yes.
Mamaroneck, which is pretty cool to begin with, but
Right.
this could be a big point.
Well,
Now
you know
you-
what? That's an excellent point. In any community, you want a balance of commercial and retail and business with the residential, so that you don't have the burden of all the tax base on the residential, and you want to have a balance so that the commercial offsets.
Rich, that's an excellent point. Many communities enjoy reduced tax burden because of the commercial enterprises in their communities. Harrison, for one, White Plains, and that makes it more attractive for some people to live in. I mean, Mamaroneck has many, many great things going for it, and we don't have the time to enumerate all of them. Schools are one, and the
Yes.
park, of course, is another. However, do residents of the Village of Mamaroneck enjoy a tax advantage because of the commercial nature of the industrial area?
Don't think of it so much as an advantage or disadvantage. It should be a careful balance. So you don't want to have it weighed too much in any one direction, but in this instance, because it's that enclosed area with, you know, natural buffers like I-95 and the railroad, it does allow some what's a good word for this? It allows a little more flexibility, but focus again on commercial. Having the and as John said, having the lower level retail or other business operations with upstairs residential or live work is a perfect segue into a new vision or a future vision
And
for
to
that
speak
area.
about the real estate aspect too, is right now, for instance, when I did the train station over, average kind of office rent would be like in the $20 a square foot. But when you do something kind of cool like we did in the train station, now you're talking about getting maybe $30 a square foot. And if you get that type of rent and that gets into the assessment, now you're talking about bringing up your tax base. So as Andrew said, some of these businesses, well, right now, I'll just keep it as a parking lot and I get a certain rent for that. But you start bringing something on a
Right.
higher level, now you
Well,
get some
I'm thinking about
some value.
appealing to residents who don't own parking lots in that area or don't own property there. But will residents in the residential sections of the community see an advantage to further development of the industrial area?
That's a great question in the sense of the committee and the village planner has been approached by several individuals that live in the community, the Village of Mamaroneck, Town of Mamaroneck, who said, you know what, we love this, we live here, we want to see this succeed, we want to invest, we had one group that was interested actually in building a French bakery and boutique grocery right in the industrial area. And these are individuals that live and call the Town of Mamaroneck, Village of Mamaroneck home.
Free samples?
I think they're on their way.
We have really only another minute left. I know you've gone to the community, involved as many people who were willing to participate as possible in the visioning for this section. I'm curious to know what kinds of ideas people came up with, what you had to consider and maybe discard, or what you'd really like to see happen. Why don't you start, Rich?
I think it's not so much important to focus on what has been brought to the table, because it's all right now vision. As Andrew mentioned, there's been discussion of sports facilities. There's been discussion of a hotel. There's been discussion of food,
school,
artisanal school.
Higher
education.
education, right?
Higher
Not
education.
middle or higher.
So there's a
I
lot
love
of
the
different
idea of a
ideas.
hotel. I mean, that's something that we sorely could use in this area.
There's a lot of different ideas and concepts, but right now what we're trying to do is build a tabletop. We're trying, as John said, think about doing a generic environmental impact statement to focus on the area and then figure out what would work. Once it actually comes down to brass tacks, you'll have applicants come in, we want to put this there, we've assembled enough of a property to propose this, or things, things of that nature.
If I could jump in on that point, because we're not going to wave a wand and have
Right.
all these things happen tomorrow.
Yes.
This is visioning, and then things that we think about as additions to our zoning code. But ultimately, it's going to have to go back to the planning board. It's going to have to go to the zoning board. It's going to have to go to
So all the resources
architecture
of the
review.
village review boards and bodies will be enlisted
Right. Absolutely.
to experience this and to try to
Help guide it.
identify any problems and
Right.
perhaps see opportunities that might have been
Right, and
missed.
I serve on the planning board now, and to Andrew's point before, any application that comes regarding the industrial area now, we are already asking them to do things environmentally sensitive so that there's a reduction in the
Footprint.
impervious surface and adding more pervious surface by at least 15 to 20% so that
Pretty
it becomes
significant.
better for the environment. So that
Well,
type thing will continue.
I wish we had more time.
Excellent.
You're welcome. Thanks
And
for
thank
having
you
me.
at home for watching. I'm Alice Bloom. We'll see you next time.